giving people a sense of the importance of our gut. I think it's often ignored as an organ of health. Like it is just as important as your liver, as even your heart, like if your gut is unhealthy, you're definitely going to be unhealthy.
Most of us in the beauty and health industry, if you're in this industry, you do a lot of research to try to figure out what's real and what's not. But with the advent of social media and things like that, there's so many different pathways that you can take that you kind of don't know which one is the right one. And, luckily for us today, we have a powerhouse guest that will kind of set us straight, well known in the longevity space, and who also happens to be a plastic surgeon. So, this guy's got it all.
Who also happens to be a big-time entrepreneur.
Yeah. Listen.
We could learn a lot today from this guy.
Let me just preface the conversation by he got his medical degree at 21. And,
to make us look bad.
Yeah, 21 people, okay? And then secondly, I think our Harvard business degree with the business that we'll talk about that you've started. Obviously that puts you as one of the moguls in the anti-aging and longevity space. So this is Dr. Shah. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for that kind introductions. Too kind. I really appreciate
We left
that.
one big thing out. I don't know if you guys have seen big signs all over your town with a sign that says Next Health. Mm-hmm. This is the man behind it. And it's amazing because people can have a lot of different thoughts about a lot of different things, but he actually makes it all happen. And it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, man.
It's
I really appreciate it.
such a pleasure to be able to sit here and have John and I just chat with you.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Man. Listen, there's so many things that I want to talk about. We're going to keep all this straight. I think maybe for the viewers and the listeners, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get here? I can only imagine with the amount of accomplishments. Let's just start with the basics.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Yeah.
Bring me through it. How'd you get here?
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned, I was lucky enough to be able to graduate medical school at a young age. So I've had multiple careers in medicine since I got out of med school. And, I was born in New Jersey. My parents are Indian immigrants, and they kind of, just really made it known since I was born that I was going to be a doctor. Thank God I liked that career.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. Yeah,
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Is your dad a doctor as well?
Yeah, my dad was a physician in India, and he did traditional medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, which actually ties in a lot to my story because a lot of what I talk about is grounded in just ancient medicine as well. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's got to change your perspective a
little
bit.
It does. I feel like, that changes my perspective because it's like we've always known what we need to do to be healthy for generations. And is now finally like science is accepting this. It's so interesting. But anyhow, I did surgery. I started off like all of us, general surgery, trauma, being in the ER, got tired of doing that, said, let me try to get a little bit more time back. And so I specialized in reconstructive plastic surgery. And that was my career for like 20 years. And so, as you guys know, I had surgery centers. We worked on hiring other physicians to work with us and just kind of grew that business. But a big part of that story is I was working 12 hours a day in surgery. Like you guys know, like it's always ends up becoming a 12, 14-hour day sometimes. Yep. And then you're done with that, and you take a little quick break and you like start working on the business, right? So now you got bills to pay, you got notes to write, you got employee issues to manage, you got people to call on the business front. And so, I always say I worked 12 to 14 hours in surgery every day, and I worked another 20 hours a day on the business. I was at a negative time schedule because you're just constantly working. And I got sick. I don't know how you guys manage to look so good being in the business.
It's having a buddy to do it with.
We're trying to use some of your principles here.
Yeah, but I was not good. 10 years ago, I was 50 pounds overweight, but worse than that, I was on 3 high blood pressure medications, which was not controlling my blood pressure. I was developing an autoimmune condition, so they were putting me on immune suppressive medications. Wow. Yeah, jeez. And I was pre-diabetic, and my renal markers are going up, affecting my kidneys.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I was like on the verge of like, really going down the wrong path. And like, they have all these like longevity charts or like, we always talk about when you look at studies, we talk about what's your survival rate, right? Definitely. And so with this combination of illnesses. I'll never forget. My son had just been born. I was home from the hospital first day. There happened to be a New England Journal of Medicine next to me. I opened it up. It happened to be, what is your 10-year survival rate if you have an autoimmune disease and metabolic syndrome and hypertension?
And you're like, ding, ding, ding. This is me.
That's me.
You're like, oh no.
That's me. I'm not going to live to see my newly born son graduate from high school, like 50% chance of mortality in 20 years. I was like, this is not where I want to be.
Yeah.
It's real. It gets real at that point.
So I'm sure that was pretty pivotal. At that point, you say, all right, I need to rein it in and come up with a new direction, because otherwise you're running yourself into the ground.
And no matter how successful you are, it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter, right?
So you can work, make all the money in the world, but you're driving yourself into the ground.
Yeah, I can't.
Exactly. Like philosophically, I think we're all programmed as surgeons and doctors to just work as hard as possible. Like that's our residency, right? And then you're also trying to just make it in this world, and you just realize everything becomes real, that the money means nothing if you don't have the time, right? And
if you don't feel good.
Right? Exactly. That's a really key point, actually. I'm glad you said that. I did not feel good. So I would come home and I wouldn't be able to do anything because I would just lay there like on the couch. So that was a pivotal moment for me, and it was a slow change. I didn't have the knowledge back then to understand how to get healthy myself. So saw concierge doctors and they just gave me more pills. I saw, I went to the gym with a trainer and he's just like, work out harder, and none of that was working. And thank goodness I had a, supportive group of friends that told me like, look, why don't you take some time off and just go figure this out? And that's what I did. So I went out there and re-educated myself on the science of health, which, in medical school, we don't get a lot of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, very true.
When you're a surgeon, you're trying to diagnose disease and handle trauma, and you're like in it to like fix things. And so you don't get a lot of health science as well. So I just went to every conference I could find I became a personal trainer, for example, myself.
No
I
way.
became a nutritionist myself. And then I discovered functional medicine, which, have you guys had a lot of experience with functional medicine?
We're delving into more and more of it. We actually are partnered with Remedy Place.
Yes.
And we, they do a lot of functional medicine over there. And so, but it's more in your face, on the scene. I think the last time we talked and we were in the process, we were building a regenerative medicine clinic in Cabo. And so it's finally coming to fruition in a few weeks. And
Congrats.
So now we're slowly navigating this longevity and anti-aging space. And there's so many different ways you can go with it. And, there's forefront medicine. We don't know if it's dangerous. Everybody's heading, catapulting in that direction. But there are some basic tenets. And that's why, I thought it would be great to have you tell our listeners. I mean, first of all, I wanted you to talk about, your views on our current healthcare system. I mean, you talk about healthcare versus sick care all the time, and we agree. But second, you kind of came up with a wellness wheel with 12 different, points that you feel create the perfect balance towards living longer. Exactly. So maybe you can run with it.
And out of curiosity, I just want to in your whole kind of story, once you stopped and you went and you went to these conferences and you became a trainer and you became a nutrition. How long did it take for you to say, oh, wow, I want to open up Next Health?
Yeah, on the business front,
because,
for sure.
Because you had very lucrative businesses that were going on, plastic surgery centers, multiple, and obviously those kept going. But you went and did your own thing.
Yeah.
And at that time, you just were learning.
Right.
You weren't doing anything to make money. And you were just taking care of yourself, feeding your mind, so you can, and then you came up with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What does the time frame look like too? I'm just curious.
This happened over the course of 2 years. The first year was just learning. I just, took a bunch of time off, go to conferences. I still operated. I was still seeing my patients. I have a lot of post-op patients, as we always have, and people that wanted surgery pre-op. But the best part about it was all the stuff I was learning, I was telling my patients, and they were getting healthier too. And in your preoperative laboratory work, you're never measuring like a hemoglobin A1C or HSCRP, inflammatory markers, metabolics. You're not measuring that stuff. You just want to make sure they're going to make it through the surgery.
Yeah, you don't want them to bleed out.
Right? You're right.
Exactly.
But look at what you're doing now.
Right. So now I started measuring all the stuff that I was following on myself. Like I was measuring all the biomarkers of health. And I was finding most of the patients that were coming to see me for plastic surgery, they were a metabolic disaster when you look under the hood of their health. And I'm like, look, you need to go get on a program where you're lowering your sugar. Like you need to wear a continuous glucose monitor. You need to consider completely changing your diet. And then while I was learning myself, I was turning the health of my patients around to the point where they were getting super healthy before undergoing surgery.
Brilliant.
And it was a massive shift. My patients would come to me, and for the first time, like, of course, people are really happy when you change your life with plastic surgery, right? Sure. We love those positive words of affirmation. Thank you, doctor, you changed my life.
Of course.
But this was different. Now they were saying, not only did you change my life from the surgical standpoint, but I'm healthier than I've ever been before.
Love that.
Like, you added years to my life. And so getting that, I was like, this is the kind of medicine I want to practice. I want to do this.
Even speaking personally, what a big achievement I feel it is when I can get a patient to stop smoking for surgery and then they continue to stop smoking. To me, that's like such a huge achievement.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is taking that to the next level. That is from nutrition, health, wellness, mental, physical aspects. And now I'm imagining complication rates go down.
Massively.
So it makes our life easier because every now and then we look at each other, we're like, oh man, this is a rough day at the office. We just, because you're bound to run into something where
I think it's an easy fix too. Get plastic surgery, fix everything.
Right.
You're messed up under the hood. You're messed up under this hood, and and it's impossible to make someone happy like that too.
Right. For your own practices too. Like I'll give you the list of biomarkers that I measure.
I love it.
It's easy for you to just look at that and be like, you need to do these 4 or 5 things, and you're going to turn your health around while we go through this surgical journey together. And now all of a sudden you're impacting every aspect of their life.
I love it.
And your patients will be so much happier. I fully I got a little bit burnt out from doing surgery too. So now I'm fully in this longevity medicine space for now where.
And you're not operating now.
I'm not operating. I stopped operating because I really wanted to dive into this space.
That's
and
great.
It became like a
Look how young he looks.
monster.
And the smile on his face.
He looks great. He's got a nice tan.
I was like, wait a sec, we're missing something here. Oh my God.
No, but it is a lot of fun. And, through that's when I started Next Health because I just wanted to open clinics and that's all we focused on. And, that's expanding now worldwide. So I can take the message out.
That's amazing. They're everywhere. And everyone I know that goes to them is very happy. I interrupted John and we were talking about the 12 essential
yes. Let's talk about
parts
that.
of this wheel. Please educate us.
Okay, so as you guys were alluding to, you have all this information coming from all these different sources. You have like advanced longevity, functional medicine, just the basics. And so when I sit down with the patient, I realize that I need to put this in a structure for them that is understandable and organized so that we can focus on the right things at the right time. So we start off, there's 12 points of this wheel. We start off with the basics, which we all know are nutrition, sleep, and movement. We put a lot of energy into that because a lot of people, they get paralysis by overanalysis, by all the ridiculous amount of information out there.
Yep.
People have millions of followers on Instagram because they follow a vegan diet. And then you have people who have millions of followers because they follow a carnivore diet.
Yes.
And there's so much competing ridiculous information out there. So we sit down with them and we say, look, on the basics, we're going to do the Pareto principle. What's the 20% of this information that's going to move the needle 80% of the way for you? And we get that straight. Then the second part of this is bringing Western medicine into modern times. And what I mean by that is we know what are the top causes of death of humans, men and women? Heart disease.
Cardiovascular disease.
Exactly. Cardiovascular disease, right? Exactly. Metabolic syndrome, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. Okay,
the four horsemen.
Exactly, the 4 horsemen. How do we take those off the table for you personally? How do we mitigate against your genetic risks, your lifestyle risks, and make those 4 things a non-issue for you? And we have the technology to do that now. We have the technology to diagnose cancer stage 1. Cancer's biggest enemy is being diagnosed as stage 1, right?
Absolutely.
It's treatable, not 5-year survival rates at stage 3 or stage 4. So we focus on that next. So we go from basics to modern Western medicine, and then we go into functional medicine. Functional medicine is root cause medicine. How do we treat all these diseases from their root causes so that you never get into any disease state, whether it be autoimmune, whether it be high blood pressure, whatever it is. And we focus people in on those root causes. So what is functional medicine in a nutshell? It's reducing inflammation with treating your gut health, making sure your hormones are regulated with hormonal health, and also there's a lot around stress and emotional health as well. And then once we're done and detoxifying your life, that's the other thing. We live in the most toxic environment that humans have ever lived in. How do we apply the Pareto principle to detoxify 80% of your life? We make that happen for people. Once you do that, not only do you avoid disease, but you start feeling incredible too.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have this basis of inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction that we all live in, and you just start feeling better. You have more energy, you're sleeping better, your thoughts are better, you're not attention deficit or depressed or all of those things. And then that's the third part, functional. And then the last part is longevity science. You have to have all this right before you start going into this advanced stuff, because I don't care how many, gene replacement therapies you do. If you're not sleeping and you're going to McDonald's for every meal, it's not going to work. You're wasting your money and your time. So that's how we take them through the process of the wellness wheel.
That's very well. It's funny. We have a patient who does exactly what you just said. Doesn't do the first bit, just skips to the last bit. If you know what I'm talking about. And it's funny because I'm like, there's a reason you're not feeling good.
Right.
You have to fix everything else.
Exactly.
And is this something that's from Next Health? For example, if I want to make myself better and I want to use your 12 essential principles and really clean up my own health.
Right.
How do I do that?
Yeah, so that's my paradigm that we use at Next Health. And what we do is we kind of hold your hand through the process. So, if you don't have access to a Next Health, or if you just want to do this yourself too, I have a lot of information on how you can also use the Pareto principle. But at Next Health, if you come in, what we do is when you come in, we will do a standard set of in-depth testing on you. So we're doing 500 different blood biomarkers. Wow. We're doing full genetic testing on you. We're doing a full body MRI. We're scanning your heart. We're doing all of that on you. We're even measuring methylation tests of your DNA to see what your biological age is. And so then once we have all the information, we can sit down with you and go through these 12 steps, this 12-step program of your health.
That's great.
To really move the needle. And then what we do is every quarter, we measure some of those biomarkers to make sure they're moving in the right direction. And at the end of a 1-year program, we'll remeasure biological age. And we're seeing people's biological age turn around 20 years sometimes. Wow. Yeah.
So you do it every quarter for the labs. How often do you do the scans, like the MRIs? I've always wondered, if you do one of these scans, because it's very in vogue, right?
Yeah.
Prevent the cancer before it happens. How much time do you have where you're like, I'm okay? Is it every 3 years, every 5 years, every 10 years?
Yeah.
Is there an answer? I don't even know.
The answer is, if you had unlimited resources, you would do this on a yearly basis, right? Because there are cancers that can go from stage 1 to stage 4 within the course of a year. However, most people don't have the ability or even the time to do this on a yearly basis, even though it's just a 1-hour scan. And you and I, we know it's no radiation, so that's not a risk there as well. But most of my patients are skipping a year, and they'll do it like every other year. Okay. There are some patients that are just hypervigilant and just want to know every year, because maybe they have a family history of cancer, those kind of things. So I think with time, the technology is getting faster, and as we know, everything gets less expensive too.
Yes, it was like the first plasma screen that came out. Exactly. Everybody spent $10,000, and now you're getting it for $250.
Right.
It's so interesting, and I want all of our listeners and viewers to take this point away, that the current sick care system, which is, we've talked about this before, where we wait till you have symptoms and then we treat it. It's like bop-a-mole medicine. You keep treating the symptom, but you keep running into something else. And this is a complete paradigm shift where we are saying, okay, early detection, and the functional medicine aspect is really important. I think, now that we know the importance of gut health and what it does, look, as plastic surgeons, gut equates to radiant skin, good gut health.
Exactly.
You can imagine what it does for everything else. Yeah. So I just want all the listeners and viewers to take that point home with you, is that no longer, for the people who they pride themselves on, I've never been to a doctor. Well, that's good for you. But when something happens and it's too late, now you feel pretty dumb.
Exactly.
The idea is we have the ability to give you more information sooner so you can change that entire trajectory of aging.
And wouldn't it feel better if you got a clean bill of health and had everything checked out anyways, right? Like people are like, well, I know I'm healthy. Why do it? I personally want to do it to make sure I'm okay. Because you want to, because it's important to know. 15, 20, 30 years ago, to do this kind of stuff was completely just, you don't even talk about it. It's way too expensive.
Right.
You could have done it, but it was way too expensive.
Right.
Now that you can do it, the average person can do it. You don't have to be wealthy to do it. And that's what's my next question is, how can you, with your brilliant mind,
Thank you.
turn around and make this a national system? Like that would be the breakthrough of all breakthroughs. And I know that's probably eventually that's probably what you want to do.
Yeah. And so, with Next Health, we are moving into a national model. We have locations opening up all over the country right now.
How many units do you have now?
Right now we have 6, but we have 50 opening in the next 3 years. Yeah, we've used a franchise model where we're partnering with really smart doctors and really smart business people to launch these in multiple cities throughout the country and the world. We're opening Dubai, Vancouver, Canada, and also in Australia as well.
Fantastic.
So I think the first part of this is, how do we make this a national system? And I think what you're alluding to there is, how do we get insurance to pay for this, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, we need to have a little bit of a mindset shift. And so I get it that people are a little bit upset about Western medicine right now, because you're right, it is whack-a-mole disease care. But we have to remember, that's what medicine was designed to do. When you get really sick, now we have a solution for you.
Right.
But all disease starts 20 to 30 years before you get really sick, right? Yeah. And so our entire system, including the insurance system, is made to focus on that last part of disease, that last 20%, whereas the 80% that happens in front of it, no one even talks about. And so the answer and the solution to that is to, number one, I always talk about becoming the CEO of your own health, right? So you need to take control of your own health, like you take control of your own business right from the very beginning. So you turn 30, 35, that's when you start taking control of your own health. You learn what are your top 10 biomarkers that you need to follow, and you go out there and invest the money or ask your doctor to order the lab test, and you get a spreadsheet and start tracking these things and know when they're going in the wrong direction, right?
It reminds me, there was this horrible movie, but it was Justin Timberlake, and you had to purchase time. It would be so interesting. You remember that?
Yeah.
It would be so interesting if all of us were given a basic number. Do you know how a perspective would change if it said, all right, the way you're going right now, you've got 6 years.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to change it to 34 years.
Right.
Do you think someone is going to change? 100%. It's the ability to know some of these things early on where it completely changes that outlook. So I think with what you're doing is genius. And there are other companies that do the same thing. I mean, they do parts of it. Human Longevity Institute, they're someone else that was, trying to do this where it's early detection, but they didn't incorporate all the rest of the things. Prenuvo scanning, amazing.
And none of them have been as easy as Next Health. Next Health, you can walk into the Century City Mall and walk in and sign up. And I think that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Because it makes everyone be able to access it. For example, with Human Longevity, no one knows about it, right? You have to really find out about it and drive down to a certain place and get it done. This makes it so accessible that it really is like anyone who's buying themselves a pair of shoes downstairs can come and do something for their health.
Yeah.
And I love that. That right there is at the core of trying to give this to everyone.
The point I definitely am trying to make is that now we're seeing it.
Yes.
We are seeing multiple companies pop up saying, all right, guys, wake up. This is what we need to do. And it's just a matter of us. You're right. It's an entire mind shift with our current strategies that clearly aren't working.
Right, exactly. I think some of these companies like Prenuvo is a great company. We actually use them for some of our scans. It's just a piece of the puzzle. And what we're trying to do is, as physicians, people are coming to us to curate this whole thing for them and really figure out how do we put this all together. And like you said, when I started Next Health, I literally wrote down all the things wrong with going to the doctor right now, because I remember I was going to concierge doctors myself. I'm like, I hate having to park in this crazy parking structure, go up to like the 20th floor of a building and it's like 1980s
So
furniture,
annoying.
and then I have to see 10 different specialists for 10 different things. Like, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
So with Next Health, we just wanted to turn that completely on its head. We wanted easy access, spaces that are inspiring, that you don't feel like you walked into a sick care center, places where you could just start doing stuff right away. And that's kind of the basis of how we formulated the thesis behind Next Health.
Now, everyone wants to know timeline of how all this works, and I am a mess of a person health wise, and I want to turn myself around. So I come and knock on the door here at Next Health, and you guys open it up. And we go through all the scans, and we go through the 12 essential parts of the wheel. People want to know, how long is it going to take for me to feel different? Now, me and you know the answer, but the people listening may not. So what is the realistic goal here that people should be thinking? Like, this really is a lifetime kind of adventure that they're going on. But what is the realistic time frame of when people are going to be like, oh, I feel a lot better.
Yeah,
Now
absolutely.
it's working.
So realistically, if you are willing to put the work in, that's a key if. You got to put the work in.
Absolutely.
You can't have your visit at Next Health and go to Vegas the next day for like a week. It's not going to work.
Sounds like me.
So if you're willing to put the work in, we've seen massive improvement in people's health in 6 months. And so I always say 6 months is the number. That give me 6 months and we will completely change everything. Honestly, it took me 6 months because I was willing to put the work in after that stark reality I saw. I would say that, some people do it faster. Some people are a little bit slower, but they still see change. And I think that, the other key part of this is I spend a lot of time educating my patients on how to become habit forming ninjas. Like you just gotta know how your brain wants to form habits. And so once we can get some habits on board, like things just start changing, right?
Yeah.
But there's no easy cut from A to Z. You have to put the work in.
And it's important, as first 3 pillars you talked about.
Right.
And those really require forming special,
Exactly.
these specific habits: diet, movement, and nutrition, right?
Exactly.
And those are all habits. That's
Right.
all it is. You can't make an excuse to say, I don't have time. You have to make it so that's a part of your habit.
Yeah, reprioritize, because again, we come up with so many excuses, especially as surgeons.
Yeah.
Remember at residency, if you didn't do some sort of activity, you'd fall off, the wayside because
There's no time.
There's no
time, right?
Yeah, you had to keep yourself moving. I find that, again, the great part about the wheel is that it's not just one thing, meaning I can't just go to the gym and then come home and eat burgers all day. Right?
Even though he does.
I've been known.
Full pizza.
It's a weekend. It's a
What's
weekend.
going on here?
A whole pizza.
Yeah. Even The Rock has his cheat days, all right?
Exactly.
No, but I think that to address multiple different avenues of restructuring your life is the only successful way. And that includes emotionally, spiritually, whatever it may be, because, we had a podcast guest recently that suffered an accident, a fall plus a car accident, and was in a wheelchair for 5 years. Used her mind to help heal and think, but again, it's an emotional and mental and spiritual space that allows you to heal. I just think that if we try to focus on one particular aspect, that we're going to lose.
Absolutely.
And so how did you change, when you look at sleep, besides exercise, right? Because you became a personal trainer, and diet, you became a nutritionist, which to me, I think is absolutely phenomenal. What about sleep? You said one of the main things, we talk about movement, sleep.
Right.
How did you learn to sleep, right?
So-
it's a tough thing. Some people can't sleep, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, sleep, believe it or not, is easier than most of the other things. And I'll tell you why. So I always talk about the Pareto principle. Once again, the Pareto principle on sleep for most people is figuring out whether or not they have some form of sleep apnea. Okay. And it's amazing. Like 50% of the people out there, they actually do have some form of sleep apnea, especially when they have other multiple syndromes going on, whether it be metabolic syndrome, et cetera. And so we really ask a lot of questions about this. If there's any indication, it's called the Stop Bang questionnaire, any indication, then we do a sleep study and we start getting them treated for sleep apnea. So that's step one. Step two is getting your sleep routine right. which is just putting a few things into your routine, which is actually, it sounds a lot harder than it is. So we only put like one little thing in at a time so people can start adding this stuff in. Your sleep routine starts the moment you wake up. Waking up, going outside, exposing your light to the sun, just getting sunlight in your eyes, natural light, sets your circadian clock. People don't realize that's a really important part of the entire sleep routine.
Interesting.
And then lastly, the sleep environment. We make modifications to the sleep environment to make it resemble what our caveman ancestors slept in, a cold, dark cave, right? Cool the room down, blackout curtains, and white noise machine if it's not totally quiet.
I'll talk to my wife about the temperature in the room. I like it cold as can be. That's a tough one.
I got a solution for you.
Yeah.
Do you have your
a different room?
That's one of them.
What was the solution?
The 8 sleep mattress pad. Have you heard of this thing?
Yes, you can control the temperature.
Yes,
really?
It's incredible. Yeah. It controls your wife's temperature and yours temperature individually. So you can do whatever you want. The best part about it is nice and warm when you get into bed, and then it'll cool it down the minute you fall asleep, and it'll warm it back up in the morning so you wake up easy.
Because for me, it's hard to sleep in a very warm room.
Yeah.
Most people think it's the other way around. They're like, no, it's cozy and warm. I'm like, no sheets, just let me sleep. So
people have different preferences. This thing works pretty well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was talking to you earlier about Rhonda Patrick and Jay Greenberg, and you know, there are multiple different podcasts. You know, when we talk about anti-aging and longevity, now we talk about intermittent fasting, and we talk about cold plunges and red light therapy. Are these things that you incorporate into the milieu of Next Health, or not necessary?
Absolutely. I mean, they are actually a core part of our process. Is what you're talking about there are these little micro stresses, okay? So cold, heat, even infrared, they contribute to our health by stressing our mitochondria, with the powerhouse of our cells, just enough so that they become healthier and they form new mitochondria, okay? So when your body senses stress, what it wants to do at a cellular level is make more energy. And the way it gets that signal is from these micro stresses. So we incorporate that actually from the very beginning. We put a hot, cold, infrared program into place for people so they can get the benefits of this. And we even have hyperbaric chambers too to provide some benefit too.
Wow.
Awesome. And along the same lines, do you use any type of devices, in the sense that I know he's got the ring on and I've got the watch on, and to really kind of, you know, monitor your sleep and monitor your movement, maybe even your calories, steps, so forth, so on. I know you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, the wearables are a key part of the process as well. Now, you know, with everything that we do, and you guys know this as well, patients are all different from each other. So you have on one end the patient that wants to wear 3 different wearables and compare the data to each other. And then you have on the other end the patient that's like, I don't want to know, don't tell me because it'll stress me out, right?
Yeah.
No,
We get it.
you're right.
And so it's a bell-shaped curve of people out there. And so we try to fit the data collection to the individual. However, I will say that for almost all of our patients, even if the data is going to stress you, I need the data so I can help you, you know? And so we'll do things like a sleep monitor for 8 weeks, just until we're modifying their sleep enough with their routines and all of this and their environment to get them sleeping. You know, we're aiming for an hour or more of deep sleep every night. Once we can get them there, we'll stop the wearable.
Right.
So that we have that same philosophy throughout all wearables. All the data that we get, we're really trying to tailor it to what the individual's psyche can kind of handle too.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. Going along those same lines, let's say, you know, obviously we look at stressing the mitochondria. Do you look at how important is it in this program for you to add supplementation, meaning NR, NMN, or some of the other supplements that may help? You know, what I don't want to do is head down the same path and say, all right, instead of giving you a medicine, we're just going to give you these 3 supplements that'll do the same thing. But at the same time, sometimes we need a little boost or an adjustment. How important is that in Next Health?
Yeah, it's another big part of our process actually is talking about supplements and medications and what's going to affect that individual patient. So once again, it's a bell-shaped curve. You have someone that looks up like every supplement that 4 different biohackers are taking and puts them into 7 plastic bags a day.
Yep.
And then you have the person that's like, I can't swallow a single pill and I don't want to take any supplements ever. And so there's like this,
It's so funny.
Right?
Yeah,
And so
it's so true. It's so true.
These people, like some people, I'm trying to get them off a lot of the garbage that they're taking.
Yep.
And other people, I'm like, look, there's some basic nutritional needs that your biomarkers are telling us you need vitamin D in the form D3K2. You need essential fatty acid. You need some omega-3s. And so there's some 4 or 5 basic supplements that we believe most people are going to benefit from. And then there are some advanced supplements that you'd mentioned, NAD, NMN, urolithin A. There's some advanced supplements coming out there that I really like as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's so interesting. I do take probably 10 supplements a day, and it was interesting. I was going through HLI for a while.
It's that bell curve here.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'll listen to a podcast and say, oh man, that sounds like me. I need that. I'm the worst because I have no idea if some of even as a physician, have any idea if some of these interact. But it's interesting because I think that some of these can be amazing. Others can be very detrimental. We had a recent podcast with the director of the supplement agency of the FDA.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they were talking about, the stamp of approval on certain things and what
And
was
how there
necessary.
really wasn't a whole lot.
Yes.
It's very unregulated.
It's very unregulated. So that's just something for the viewers and listeners to keep in mind that, again, listen to your physician. They're going to kind of guide you along that path, which ones you should take.
So million dollar question. What do you take?
Yeah.
First of all, you look great. I haven't seen you in a
Thank you.
while.
So
You really
sweet.
do.
Thank you,
So
man.
you're taking good care of yourself,
Thank
and
you.
you're practicing what you preach, which, in my opinion, is the most important thing. If you're sitting across from me and you're in horrible health and you're telling me and you're kicking all of this knowledge because it is really amazing, I'd be like, okay, this guy, I'm not going to listen to what he says. But you look great, and you and hopefully you feel as good as you look.
You definitely have the microstressors there with all that you're involved in. So, I get where your mitochondria are at optimal activity.
I won't lie and tell you that my life is not stressful. I'm constantly moving, constantly traveling. We have locations opening up all over the place. So for me, just like most people, it is a struggle, and it is a kind of a daily push to keep myself in a state of health. But I can tell you that I never want to go backwards. Like, I feel so good now. And just the lifestyle I'm in right now requires me to be maximally healthy.
Absolutely.
Right? So I have to do all these things. As far as what I do take all the basics. I take omega-3 supplement. I take vitamin D3K2. I take NR, which is a form of NAD that I really like. And then I take urolithin A. I also take, I did struggle with prediabetes, and I have a huge history of diabetes in my family. And so I do take Akkermansia, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Akkermansia by Pendulum is a really good microbiotic that actually increases your body's ability to remove glucose from food. Yep. And so these are some of the things that I like to take. Creatine is one of the best studied supplements out there. I take 8 grams of creatine a day. It protects not just your muscle but also your brain. Yeah. Lower rate of Alzheimer's disease in people that take creatine.
Buying some on the way home.
Love that.
Yep. And magnesium is incredibly important, especially for your sleep, but also many biological processes as well. So that's my stack of 6 supplements that I take. Look, there's 1,000 other things out there. I don't take things that aren't right for me or that my body doesn't need. I do keep like a really good greens powder that I take in the morning when the day before I didn't eat like a salad, like I didn't get enough of my phytonutrients in. I'll do it the next day, but I don't take a multivitamin every day because I measure my micronutrient levels and they're fine for the most part. Yeah.
Now let's take it one step further.
Sure.
We've optimized. We are taking our vitamins. Have done our MRIs. We're doing our we're doing everything. The next step in longevity is obviously stem cells and exosomes and that beautiful world of longevity. I'm just going to kind of open it up and see what you have to say about it.
That's a really interesting topic of discussion right now at this moment. So what I will tell you is, you're familiar with the root causes of cellular aging. There's a whole paper that came out.
The 9.
Yeah, the 9 causes of cellular aging. Well, I think what's happening now is you're seeing kind of a revolution in that space too, where Dr. Yamanaka, I don't know if you heard about him with the Yamanaka factors, being able to use these Yamanaka factors to even go upstream of those root causes of aging and reprogram our cells to go backwards, right?
great.
And so even though stem cells are part of the solution right now at this moment for healing damaged tissue, for example, I do think that there's going to be another solution that's even more upstream from that coming.
More gene editing.
Exactly. More gene editing, more turning back cellular aging from that process.
You made reference to that earlier, talking about the mini circle technology, the DNA plasmids and things like that. I can't remember who does. I know Adil Khan up in Canada does the, for $25,000 you can, do gene editing with follistatin and reverse your age by up to 9 years or something like that. I think the two paired together will be phenomenal, meaning regenerative medicine side plus gene editing, and now you replenish and grow. And I think the funny part is, and you know this as well as I do, every single sci-fi movie, like we're there. We are there with what's happening in a lab. It's really crazy.
Right.
Like he was saying, let's say you're optimized, you've hit most of the points, and now they say, all right, what's next, doc?
Yes. Okay. So just to make it clear for your audience, a lot of this more advanced stuff, it is expensive right now because it is the infancy of this. And there are a lot of leaps of faith that you're making right now. We as physicians, as you know, we cannot promise that any of these technologies cure any specific disease, including aging, okay? But just knowing the science behind it, we can use some of these therapies right now to be able to reverse biological factors of aging that we can measure. So that's what we're seeing right now. So at Next Health, what we do is a technique called therapeutic plasma exchange. This is like the top level longevity that we're doing.
You took it right out of my mouth.
And we follow that with stem cell and exosome treatment. And so what therapeutic plasma exchange does is it physically separates your plasma from your blood cells and reinfuses your blood cells. The plasma is, as we know, where all the inflammatory cytokines live. It's where all the malformed proteins live. So basically it's like an oil change for your body, removing all this inflammation, toxins, etc. And when you inject stem cells IV after that, it gives it a base where it's not dealing with chronic inflammation, and that they're able to hone in using cytokines to areas that actually need healing. And so that's kind of like the highest level therapy that we're doing right now. I'm also traveling
with a standard that's with an apheresis, like a
with an
Terumo
apheresis.
And your plasma exchange normally takes how long? Just for
about 2 hours. Yeah, about 2 hours.
Really easy. You come in, you do it, and you walk out.
Exactly.
It's really that simple.
And then
For people that don't understand it, it really is as easy as just giving blood for 2 hours.
Exactly.
And you're using young donor plasma, or it's not just plasmapheresis. It is, you're doing true plasma exchange.
Actually, we're not using young donor plasma at this moment in time, because what we're seeing is most of the benefit actually comes from removal of the junk, and we're just using albumin right now. Yeah.
And then the reinfusion of quote unquote stem cells.
Yes.
Are you using, what do you think? What's better? Is it better to do hematopoietic, go into mesenchymal, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, the science is still open on a lot of this. However, what I can tell and what I think most of my colleagues agree with is mesenchymal umbilical cells are the ones that we use, and that's the one we like the best.
Yeah, amazing. And exosomes as well. Sorry.
And exosomes, right.
And we're calling these tissue components and nanoparticles, or we are calling them stem cells and exosomes?
We're calling them regenerative tissue components.
Yes.
Exactly.
Listen, because it's in its infancy. Obviously, the FDA is keen on protecting us, and so I know that there are certain trigger words that everybody runs for, and listen. You have to be careful because you're going to get clinics popping up on every street corner with quote unquote stem cells that may not be. And so you definitely have to.
And that's the problem, right? The problem is not the stem cells. It's the problem is the people that are making them and injecting them and then doing so in a way that there's very little oversight of the quality of what's happening. Sure. Number one, you can waste a lot of money on something that doesn't work at all. Number two, you could actually harm somebody. And we've seen that a lot with plastic surgery, with these 100%. People injecting silicone into people, and like causing all sorts of problems.
Yes.
So the FDA is right in creating a regulatory framework. However, the thing I worry about is the pharmaceutical companies looking at this as a threat and their influence over the FDA and the decision-making process as well. So, there's a lot here that needs to be worked out. Right, and I think there's, years and years of discovery we're going to go through on all of this, but I think there's some revolutions coming. And what I just tell all my patients is your job is to stay healthy and alive long enough
to see them.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think there's good benefit, and I know there is, I'm just asking you this to know, in actually directly injecting stem cells or exosomes into diseased areas? Meaning, my Achilles is really sore and I feel like it's going to snap, or my knee's really tight, or my shoulder, I can't really swing that golf club. Can you guys do that at Next Health?
We do injections into knees and into shoulders right now. Those are the areas that we do. I think anything more than that, you really want to go to a specialty clinic that really knows.
That was just a plug for Next Health.
Yeah, I mean, look, like we're very keen on referring people once they fall out of like our treatment, where we feel super comfortable doing treatments, and so. And I think that's what we all do, right?
That's how it should be, right?
Of course. Yeah, exactly. If you're a plastic surgeon, you mostly do breast and body. Complicated facelift comes in, you're not going to do it. You're going to refer
give it to him.
The fourth rhino revision, right?
I give it to him.
Yeah, thanks.
He's like, great, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm like, I'll be doing her breast talk while you do the rhino revision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, way too many times.
Obviously, we know in the recent years that, and we had alluded to it earlier, was that having a healthy gut means that you're going to have many other healthy aspects.
Yes.
But that's really important. What do you push at Next Health to make sure that people are, again, eating healthy is one thing, but restoring and I guess maybe suggesting certain things that can be done for the gut? I don't know, what you would recommend for some of our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the first thing I talk about is just giving people a sense of the importance of our gut. I think it's often ignored as an organ of health. Like it is just as important as your liver, as even your heart, if your gut is unhealthy, you're definitely going to be unhealthy. There's a massive gut-brain connection with the amount of serotonin and just even the wiring between our gut and our brain with the vagus nerve. And then also our immune system lives in our gut pretty much, right? And
absolutely.
so people need to know the importance of keeping your gut healthy. The problem with the gut is most people don't know their gut is unhealthy until it's like really, really late in the game, right? Now they have leaky gut. They have massive issues from this. And so what we do is we gut test everybody. So we are doing things like gluten sensitivity testing. We're actually testing for leaky gut using zonulin as a protein marker of leaky gut. And we find about 50% of people have an unhealthy gut.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's
50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would change if we were in Europe.
Yeah, I think it would. Absolutely.
I think it would too.
Just cleaner food.
Our processed foods and...
That's why you should have eggs in your house.
Even the gluten.
Have those chickens back there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even the gluten in Europe is different than ours.
Yes.
Even their rules around processing and alcohol, everything's very different.
It's interesting. It's the conversation we had with Dr. Gundry probably, I don't know, 6 months ago. We're sitting there talking to him, and he's talking about how he doesn't eat certain things, and he does. Because when I'm in Italy, I eat pasta.
Yeah.
But when I'm in the States, I don't.
But you probably don't get as sick in Italy.
Yeah, he said
that's what
exactly
it is. And
it.
he feels much better. He doesn't feel sick, doesn't feel as bloated, doesn't.
It was funny that you made reference to that because we had Gundry on one week and we had Paul Saladino on the other one.
Wow.
So we
was
both
hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Each one throwing shade at the other one. It was so funny. I think my only take home, because I bought into the carnivore diet for a while. I mean, I did. Then I went and tested my labs and my iron was through the roof. And I was like, okay, well, it might be too much for me. The takeaway I got was, I think if you have moderation in each of these things, more of a Mediterranean style diet, you're probably going to do okay.
Yeah. I think my explanation to all my patients is the one diet that's been studied more extensively than any other diet program out there is a Mediterranean diet. We know there's 27% reduction in heart disease, 12% reduction in Alzheimer's, depending on what study you look to, okay? But it's not really like, you don't have to go out there and just everyone start eating Greek food, right? It's a dietary pattern that works.
Yes.
And it's a variegated diet focusing on whole, healthy foods. All these other diets, they're interventions that you can try for a specific amount of time to achieve a specific result. But eventually you want your baseline to be closer to a varied diet that is sourced from good places.
Yes,
right?
you're right.
That's it. That's all.
That's what I try to live by
Exactly.
and say, and I tell my wife this, I say, try to feed the kids things that don't come out of cans and bags.
right.
If you can do
Exactly.
that, then we crushed it. If
Exactly.
everything we feed our children and ourselves, but I kept saying children because I'm like, okay, whatever. Let's get everything from the farmer's market if we can. Let's
Yeah.
get everything. It's either going to be fish, meat, chicken, or vegetables, and you're done, right?
Exactly.
The problem is, she's like, but what about when I'm running into the car? No, but you can there's always an excuse, just like John said.
There's always an
We
excuse.
can always go around it, and I think that's the key,
Right.
I think, to make ourselves healthier, especially in the gut. I agree.
Absolutely. And you don't have to do any dietary program. You can follow any diet you want. I don't care what you eat. If you cut out ultra processed foods, you've won the game.
Absolutely.
You know, and people need to realize ultra processed food is not just like the stuff in the center of the supermarket with the ingredient list.
Right.
It's also every fast food restaurant, pretty much
100%.
almost every and almost every restaurant, because they're buying the
same
crappy
stuff,
food
right?
That's
Absolutely.
cheap and exactly.
And the interesting part is your lifestyle is as busy as it gets. It really is. However, you maintain this type of nutritional pattern
For the most part.
for the most, as best as you can. Now, I know you're running through an airport. Sometimes you may not be able to, but if you can do 80% of it like that,
exactly.
then you're okay.
Absolutely.
And I have one last question.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Alcohol.
Okay, I'm glad you saved that for
Because I was
last,
gonna-
because this one might shut me off.
Because here's my thing. I was going to say we should all go out and have dinner, have a nice, nice bottle of wine because it's overdue. But what are your thoughts about alcohol? Because in our world, we're all social. I know you like to go and have a good time, have a nice dinner, and hang out with friends.
Absolutely.
How bad's alcohol? How much can you have? What should the listeners take away from this? Because everything you've kind of told us right now, I 100% agree with you, and I'm on the same path, and I want to be. But at the same time, we want to live. So we can't pull everything away from our lives.
1,000%.
What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So my advice on alcohol is, number one, the difference between having no alcohol and 1 or 2 drinks a day is minimal compared to having 4 drinks a day. Okay. So anything after 4 is considered a binge. Okay. And then if you happen to binge, it just happen, like a lot of times it just happens, right? You're having a great time. You have 4 glasses of wine. Then you need to take a week off to allow your metabolism, your liver, even just the toxins to be eliminated from your body. And if you follow that rule, try to stick to less than 2 drinks, a night. Try not to drink every night. The nights you're just home doing nothing, there's no reason to drink.
Absolutely.
Try to eliminate the nightcaps as much as possible. But you know what? Go out and have a couple glasses of wine. Let's do it. Let's go have a couple glasses of wine.
I love that.
Right? And then you know what? I might even have a couple of glasses of wine the next day if I have another engagement.
Sure.
But then I'm going to take a few days off when I'm just home and hanging out with the kids. And then if you and I go out and say we were traveling together and we're in Italy and we're having pasta and wine and we have a bottle each,
Yes.
I'm going to take a week off once I get home and just not drink anything.
That is a brilliant rule of thumb.
If you like this video, you're going to love this one.
You were just on the other side of things saying you need people just like us. We literally, it happened, I guess, over a weekend. That Monday, we're getting on a plane to go to Haiti. We'll figure it out.
Right.
And got denied. So we're like, you know what? This is the problem with large foundations.